Hi and welcome to HD Morf, the channel dedicated to the source of the mechanical knowledge of human design. In this series we will delve into the depths of the individual lines for each or the 64 gates of the Rave I Ching as described by Ra Uru Hu. The structure of every video contains general information about the gate as well as details for each line. Each gate represents a separate hexagram. We will start with a description of the hexagram line structure and the detailed meaning of the second line, followed by the general description of Gate 41 and its second line. If you are already familiar with some of the information, skip to the next relevant section. For convenience we have split the video into sections, which you can check in the description below. Hexagram line structure. Awareness is something that is of enormous importance to all of us. We are going into a very deep level into the nature of the lines. First we have to come to grips with the nature of the hexagram and how it operates. A hexagram is made up of two trigrams, a lower and an upper trigram which is made up of 3 lines each. They have a distinct relationship to each other. The first line, which is the base of the lower trigram, the ground floor of the base trigram, has a similar relationship to the fourth line which is the baseline of the upper trigram. There is consistent relationship between the lower and the upper trigram, but their functions are different and the nature of their wave and frequency is different. Human design is a logical process which is rooted in the capacity for things to be organized. We do not live in an organized world, that is, we have a structure of patterns that we overlay over the subjective chaos at different areas, beginning at the most mundane level with our relationships, whether they are personal or transpersonal. The nature of human design and the information that we will share with you in terms of how the lines work. When we look at the emotional system we look at the nature of the waves, and we see that in the emotional system there are 6 different waves which are generated by the 6th gate being the motor gate of the solarplex system. Out of that gate come the different waves, different gears in the emotional system. There is a parallel to this on the other side. You should keep in mind when we go through this process of looking through the awareness frequencies from the 1st to the 6th, that they are in resonance and harmony with the 6 emotional waves. In other words, the first emotional wave and the first awareness frequency belong to each other. Second lines. Think about our house now. We have our foundation and we know what our foundation is like, and we keep on refining it to make sure that it is a strong foundation. When you get beyond the foundation, this is something that begins to appear, that is, you have the first floor of the house which has windows that look out on the world. Due to that the second line is not about introspection at all. It is about projection. It cannot be introspective. All the second lines represent the inability to actually see the nature of the gate itself because you are so busy looking across the road. Every time you look at a second line, like 18.2 terminal disease, 48.2 degeneracy, 46.2 prima donna, 58.2 perversion, 28.2 shaking hands with the devil, you discover that the 2s have a problem. They are not connected to the foundation. They are projecting out of the windows and they just want to get to the other side of the channel. Every gate activation in your chart is looking for the other side. That is true whether you have the first or the second line. The first line isn't looking for and gets it, and the second line is desperate for it and gets it. The second line is really looking for that way across because they want to project that energy outwards. The coding of this is determination, determined to project outwards. The second line is called the instinct, tribal awareness, of determination, or not. That determination is always in the face of obstacles because the depth is lacking. There is not this sense of foundation. As you will see when we go to its resonance, the 5th line, this is the beginning of a process of learning to take the energy, or the nature of your gate and project it far outwards to universalize its nature. This is the immature level of it. There is no real foundation. There is only this need to project that aspect outwards. For example, someone with the 61.2 natural brilliance is very different from the 61.1. The occult knowledge is looking inwards, trying to find what the foundation is. Where is the philosopher's stone? How can I fix all this? How does it all work? And refining it. The second line, natural brilliance, says, I am here. Let me show you my stuff. Whether it is any good or not. They are not clear. They can be bright. They can throw their intelligence outwards, but its effect can be very chaotic, because the refinement, The foundation is not there. This is projection. The instinct, the awareness here, is to recognize who is projecting, or not. This is the potential to recognize in others instinctively whether they are just projecting something or whether they are really deep, whether they really have a solid foundation behind what they are projecting outwards. Hexagram 41. Keyword, decrease. Theme, contraction. Center, root. The pressure centers are of enormous importance, like all things. We are basically a sandwich. You have a pressure above and a pressure below, and everything else is just squashed in the middle. Those pressures rule the nature of the world that we live in. They fuel all of the basic potentials of what it is to be in a body, of what it is to live out the consciousness of being a human being. They are essential and they are always present. When I say they are always present, that is not a matter of whether you have them personally in your design, or not. As long as it is in the world, it is a part of the aura of the world and everybody gets in contact with it. So in looking at these pressure centers, please understand that we are looking at the fundamental root of all human processes. In that, the fundamental source of pressure is necessary to initiate all of these processes. The 41st hexagram is the fuel or the pressure of an abstract stream in the sensing circuit, the stream of feeling. This stream is a uniquely human stream. It is the evolutionary and genetic material necessary for us to experience incarnation in a human form. Without this stream, the human evolutionary process would not exist. Not only are we speaking here of a fundamental pressure for a life process, but in particular, to understand it is not shared with any other form of life. This is a very specific pressure and a very specific stream that is directly associated with what we experience as being human. The 41st hexagram, as a codon in our genetic code, is the only initiating codon. In other words, it is an initiating codon in the sense that it is at the beginning in the genetic structure of everything. Thus, in beginning with the 41st hexagram, with the most important pressure in our evolutionary process now and ever since we became Homo sapiens, or modern humans. The 41st hexagram is the trigger that brought us into the stage that we are in, and we are still going towards completion. What is unique for us as human beings is the capacity to be able to feel. This capacity leads to the desire for experience. The desire for experience to be able to feel and manifest that feeling is the human evolutionary process. It is what drives us from one experience to the next, until we develop through that process. It also brings into play the nature of crisis. In other words, it tells us very clearly that the evolutionary process is rooted in crisis, change and transitoriness. The 41st gate, decrease, is the gate of contraction and it says, the fuel in which there is the energy to feel, or not. So the whole capacity to feel, the complete potential that exists in our genetic spectrum, is rooted in the 41. In our work in looking at sexuality in human design, the 41 is the gate of fantasy, the capacity to be able to fantasize the feeling itself because all the feelings lie there. The old Chinese image of the 41 hexagram was the gardener who would cut back the garden in the winter time or fall, to prepare it for the following season. By cutting it back, nothing was lost, because all the potential of that plant, everything that plant could possibly be, every twig, every leaf and every flower was already there within it, contracted inside, held inside as a potential. So the 41st gate carries with it this enormous potential for any kind of experience. This is the key to what it is to be human. Its mechanic is that it is always about hunger. A human being is so different from its animal kin. They only have one kind of hunger, basic, predatory hunger to stay alive. But human beings have a duality in that. We have the material hunger, the hunger for survival, but we also have this other hunger, the deeper one, the human hunger for experience. To go to Mars and see what the rocks look like. What for? Just to see what the rocks are. To discover America. What for? Just to see what is there on the other side. So the first thing to recognize is that the basic fuel, the fundamental fuel for the evolutionary process, is the hunger to feel. The whole key to being an abstract being, whatever kind of abstract definition you have, is that the essential understanding about life is rooted in something very simple. One step after the other, don't repeat your steps. So look at what that really is saying, like the 64th gate in the Aina, because there is so much potential information. Built into these gates is a mechanism that is ready to release only one at a time. In other words, all those feelings are built up within the nature of the 41 as a resource. But if you look above the lines in the white book, it says, the limitation of resources which maximizes development of potential. If you have all these fantasies running around inside of you, it will diminish your potential. If you focus your energy, the name of this channel, on one fantasy, on one feeling, then you can move through that. And when it is over, you can go on to the next one. This is the key to the abstract process. This maximization of that potential by recognizing that this resource is always there. You don't have to have all the fantasies all the time, you can have one at a time and go through what is the correct evolutionary process. Remember, when you are looking at a hexagram, the first line is always going to represent not simply the foundation of the hexagram, but its essential truth. Gate 41 line 2, caution. When you come to the second line, you are no longer in the foundation. Now you have this deep genetic need to project the quality of the gate outwards. To project outwards this here I am with the fuel to feel. In projecting it outwards, you have the word caution. Humanism tempered by pragmatism. The evolutionary process begins in the individual, in the single being. The next step is that it has to become something broader than that, collective. The two sides of this are Saturn and Mars. A conservative nature that does not risk its own security in aiding others. You can fantasize how you can help somebody, and you can then go and focus on that and do it. You can fantasize on helping somebody and not be able to manifest that at all. You can have a feeling for starving children in Biafra and not send any coins. These things are all built into the Saturnian line. In the white book we have energy for one's own feelings but not for others. To focus on one's own feelings, one's own fantasies, and not on the feelings of others or whatever their requirements happen to be. The Martian side is the energy for the display of feelings for recognition. This is trying to get others to recognize that one is a feeling person. Remember that the second line is projecting outward. A desire for recognition that throws caution to the winds, depleting valuable resources for only temporary gain. This stream is about desire for change, for experience, and about the desire to fulfill one's fantasies. It is the expectation that if one has a fantasy and fulfills it, one is going to get something. The second line is projecting outwards that they have this resource inside of them. Remember the immaturity of Mars. Immaturity is not a question of good or bad. The immature 41.2 that is projecting out that they have the feeling, and somebody hooks into it, they may discover that they are terribly equipped for that and it can end up being a crisis because they can be a paper tiger. The fact that they are projecting something out and do not have the quality of the first line. They do not have this foundation. On the Martian side they put all the energy into projecting it out. They want people to connect to their feeling. They want to be able to get their fantasy to the next step. This can present all kinds of difficulties for them. But there is something else about this. Already in the second line, which is very rare, there is a need for others. This is the most sexual of all the streams, and there is no way that the human experience was going to be allowed to be individual. It wasn't. They are collective, and as such, early, in the second line, a line that is titled Humanism, there is a need to display this feeling for others to fulfill the feeling, the fantasy. The collective process of not having the experience by yourself, but sharing the experience with somebody else. The second line is not equipped. It is Mars, it is immature, and it has its problems with that. The exalted line, the Saturnian field, is more secure in that role. This concludes the description of Gate 41, Line 2, Caution. Stay tuned for more human design content from HD Morf.